Okay, so Baruch Hashem, we finished our fifth halacha in Likutey Halachot, and we have the big schut, the big merit to be able to start a new halacha based on a new lesson in Likutey Moran from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, the Tzaddik Yisod Olam, the spiritual master that we all need to be able to elevate from our trials and tribulations and to experience God consciousness. Rabbi Nachman teaches in Likutey Moran something very powerful, just as an introduction to this lesson. That is that all suffering in the world does not come from the events that take place in our life. It doesn't come from the comments that people make to us. It doesn't come from the painful experiences that we have. That is not where the suffering comes from, Rabbi Nachman says. Rabbi Nachman says all suffering comes from a deficit, a lacking in a faculty that's called da'at. Da'at literally translate as knowledge or understanding. But what it really means is that you have a felt sense, you have an internalized experience that Hashem is causing and recreating everything in reality. And if a person knows that and he lives with that reality, that's called he knows Hashem. So as long as a person, or whenever a person loses that faculty, he or that faculty is diminished for him. So it's completely congruent that the less da'at that I have, the more I suffer. The more da'at I have, the less I suffer. The more that I experience that every single thing that happens in this world comes from Hashem, that he's the direct cause of it, and that he's doing it for one reason, like Rabbi Nachman says, because Hashem loves me. And so why is he doing this thing? And it's only in order to bring me closer to him. When a person has actually internalized that in his heart and knows that in his mind, that's called da'at. And to the degree that a person has this thing, he does not suffer. However, at the moment that he loses it and Hashem takes it away from him, so we're going to learn why that is in a second, what happens that it causes his da'at to go into exile. So then, as a result of that, he does not experience that Hashem is in control of the world, or that he's causing the things to take place, or that he's renewing reality, or that he's doing it because he loves him, or that he truly wants to bring him closer to him. And this is the cause of the suffering. Because as an example, like I give to my students at times, let's say, for instance, you get up from your chair after watching this class. You trip on the floor, but you know that as a result of you tripping on the floor, the thing that you want the most in your life is going to come to you. Whatever it is, let's say you're not married, you want to be married. Let's say you are married, but very unhappily, and you're dying to be married happily. Let's say, for instance, you have children and they don't listen, and you would love for them to listen. It would mean the world to you. Or you can't have children and you really want to have children, but you're not able to for medical reasons. Whatever it is, everybody has deficits in our life. Let's say, for instance, if you were to trip on the floor right after you got up from your chair, after the class is over, you get that thing. You know you're going to get it because of the tripping. So not only would the tripping not bother you, not only would you probably not feel the pain of the tripping itself, you would actually be excited to trip. However, if you don't know these things and you think you just happen to be tripping, then it's painful and it's frustrating and it creates anger and it creates frustration and it could literally throw your whole day off. Now, what's the whole difference between these two situations? One thing. In the first situation, I have da'at. I know that this is from Hashem. I know that it's because he loves me, and I know it's in order that I should come closer to him. Now there's a context. There's a life force. There's a soul to the body of the event that just took place. However, as long as the soul is not connected to the body, meaning as long as there's not da'at right now in this physical situation that's taking place, then it's not just that I'm not happy, it causes tremendous suffering and tremendous confusion. You know, for instance, let's say, Chas v'shalom, I have a person in my family, he's not well. And I think to myself, oh my gosh, what is this? You know, every day I'm trying to take care of this person. I'm trying to help this person. I don't see how this could possibly be good, that my spouse, that my loved one is suffering. So either I think that Hashem doesn't care about me, or I think that Hashem's not actually doing anything, or that I don't even believe Hashem runs the world, or vice versa, whatever it is that's going on. And this itself is the greatest cause of suffering of that situation. But if a person understands that it can't be that this is happening for any other reason except that you should get closer to Hashem through what's taking place, then if you're able to know that, then there's two things that takes place. One, it immediately removes the burden and the excessive pain and suffering that comes from the event. And secondly, it now activates me. It moves me to action, because now I understand that the reason this is happening is not for that person. It's for me to get closer to Hashem. Now, how can I get closer to Hashem? So Rabbi Nachman says, by talking to him. How do you get closer to anybody? By speaking to them. So Lamais, at the end of the day, what does Hashem want from me if I have da'at? That I should talk to him. And if I don't have da'at, so then I just go into Yeyush, I go into despair. I call a million doctors. I call a million rabbis. I try to get brachot from different tzaddikim. I go on different websites to try and find out experimental medications or treatments for this situation. When in truth, all Hashem really wants is that you should get closer to Hashem through what's taking place. And when you have sufficiently done so, then either the problem will go away entirely, or you will see that the problem itself is what brought you this blessing. Because the whole reason we're brought into this world is to know Hashem. To know Hashem. It's very clear from the Rambam, it's very clear from the Zohar, that the reason why we're brought in this world is to know Hashem. And what does it mean to know Hashem? It means to know that He is the cause of everything that takes place. He is not passively allowing things to take place. He is causing everything to take place. And the reason He's doing so is that He should have a relationship with you. And it's up to us in our free will and our capacity to choose to see Hashem in the situation and to connect the events that are taking place to His ratzon, to His desire. And at the moment, or in the moments, or in the course of a day that I neglect to do so, this is the cause of the most intense part of my suffering. Now, Rav Natan is going to bring again this first halakha in the Shulchan Aruch. Yigaber kari la'amod b'boker. You need to strengthen yourself like a lion to stand up in the morning. Sheheh me'oreh hashachar. That you should awaken the dawn. So the very first halakha in the entire Shulchan Aruch, in the entire code of Jewish law, is that every Jewish man and woman should not just get up and crawl out of bed, or put on the snooze button 15 minutes and then do it again and just hope to God that it never turns on so I can keep sleeping. In fact, it's halakha that you need to arouse yourself from sleep in the morning. You need to get up with as much strength as you can, like a lion, like a person who he awakens the dawn, that he's going to awaken the morning. The morning's not going to awaken him. So now Rav Natan is going to bring another drash, another exposition based on Rabbi Nachman's very deep Torah. This lesson, which he's going to draw from, Al Pia Torah Tiku Techacha. This is one of the last lessons of Rabbi Nachman's life. And it was given, I believe, on Rosh Hashanah, but I have to look it up again after. This is Siman Chet. This is the 8th lesson in Likutey Tinyana. That's the second section of Likutey Moharan. Ein Sham Kol Torah. Rav Natan, he insists and he encourages us and he admonishes us to learn this Torah from the beginning till the end. So that's this first piece of advice. Even before you learn my Torah that I'm going to teach you, I want you to go actually look at the Torah itself that I'm going to be drawing from. And now he says like this. In brief, what is it that emerges relevant to our topic is this. She'ikar tikun, that the essence of healing, the essence of the rectification, the essence of mending, hu ayadei hatzadik haba'a koach gadol. It comes about through this tzaddik, that he's called the Bal Koach Gadol, the person who is a master of tremendous strength. And we know that the Torah speaks about what is the concept of strength. Many people think, especially in our generation, a person who's strong is a person who doesn't let anybody throw him down, a person who doesn't let anybody walk over him. that he refuses to allow a person to, so to speak, throw him under the bus. However, the Torah teaches the opposite, that a person's strength is not their physical strength, and it's not their resistance to relinquishing their own personal ego or honor, but the strength of a person comes in his ability to overcome his own personal, natural inclinations. That when a person is capable, let's say, he has a desire to do something physically, but he knows that thing is destructive for him. He knows that thing would cause him ultimately negative consequences than if he had done something else. His ability to not act on that and to do something else is called koach. That's called his strength. That's called his gevura. And Rav Natan is teaching us what is, so to speak, one of the ikarim, what is one of the essential factors that make this great tzaddik, what's called the tzaddik emet, the true tzaddik, the genuine spiritual master. And one of those faculties, which, so to speak, distinguishes or separates him from the rest of the Jewish people, is his tremendous spiritual strength. That is, that he does not allow himself to be moved in any direction by his negative lower self. That he always is able to overcome and to actually use his lower self as a vehicle for his higher self. Whereas for us, our lower self is, so to speak, our GPS. And the whole concept of Chassidut is to get us to be able to flip the script. That is, that our lower self should stop being our GPS and should only become a vehicle for revealing our higher self. That is called our nefesh elokit, our godly soul. The part of us that's actually called da'at, knowing Hashem. And because the tzaddik, over the course of his life, through his own tremendous toil and efforts and persistence, through the schut of his forefathers, through his the rachmim, the empathy of Hashem having on this person, for seeing that he has given up on everything else except to try to accomplish this very thing, that he has gotten to the point that he has become the master of his body, that he has become the pilot to his ship. Like it says about the Mashiach Tzidkenu, that he's going to come riding on a donkey, poor, lowly, and riding on a donkey. Now, one understanding of this is that he's going to suffer tremendously for the Jewish people. And therefore, he's coming on a donkey, poor and lowly, and that's true. Or it could be true. However, there's a deeper teaching which is brought in Chassidut, that is that the fact that he's riding on a donkey is indicative of his spiritual level, his madrega. That is, the fact that the donkey comes from the word chamor. Now, this is also the root word for chomer. Chomer means physicality. And he's riding on the donkey. The donkey is not riding on him, meaning that his essence, his nefesh elokit, his godly soul, is completely in control of his guf, his body, his chomer, his physicality. He's riding on top of that. And how does he do that? He does that through being poor, meaning that he has nothing of his own. He has completely nullified his ego. He has completely nullified his lower sense of self, and he is connected to his higher self, his godly soul. And as a result of that, he's called poor. That he's attained what's called malchut. He has authority. And what is that authority that he exerts? He exerts it over himself. That he rides the physicality. And therefore, as a result of him having achieved this thing, which is almost impossible for the majority of Jewish people or people in the world to achieve, to the extent that this great tzaddik does, he gets a very special, we'll call it a superpower. He gets what Rabbi Nachman calls the weapon of Mashiach, the Kli Zayin, the weapon of Mashiach. That Rabbi Nachman says that when the Mashiach comes, he will not have to lift one hand, he will not have to shoot one bullet in order to be able to conquer all of the enemies of Klal Yisrael, all the enemies of the Jewish people, both collectively and individually. He will only use one weapon, and it will not be physical. It will be his peh, his mouth. That through his mouth, the Mashiach is going to bring the entire Geula for the Jewish people. And what is one specific expression of his tefillah that he's going to use to bring redemption It's a very interesting thing that Rabbi Nachman says in the Likutey Halachot is called tefillah. That's the concept of din. He calls it a din tefillah, or a judgment prayer. Kamo Pinchas be'et shaya ma'aseh zimri. And the example that he brings is the example of Pinchas. Now, this is a very interesting example because Pinchas has a very unique role for all of history. He actually fulfills a role that nobody in the world does, not even the Mashiach himself. That Pinchas came at a time in which sexual deviance was becoming rampant. And because he himself was very, very connected to this quality of the Brit, that means that he had achieved a very high level of sexual mastery himself. That person is able to see how clearly there is damage and dissociation and disconnection that takes place from the spiritual world to the physical world when there is a pegam, a blemish in what's called the Brit, the area of sexuality. And as a result of the actions of only two people, the Chazal explained in the Gemara that Pinchas started to scream to Hashem and protest, and he advocated to Hashem, how can you bring a plague, an epidemic, a pandemic to all of Klal Yisrael just because of two people? And because of the way that he protested and the way that he prayed, like it's brought down in Tehillim, he broke the entire decree for the Jewish people. Now, what was it about Pinchas that allowed him to be able to pray like this? Why is it that somebody else couldn't pray like that? If only two people were involved, it should have been that somebody else would have prayed like that, because nobody wants a pandemic, nobody wants a virus, nobody wants a plague, nobody wants suffering in their life. And yet it was only Pinchas who had the koach, who had the spiritual strength to protest to Hashem in a way that Hashem answered him. And the reason is because Pinchas had the essence of what's called the tzaddik. That we know that according to Chazal and according to Kabbalah, that Pinchas, who Eliyahu, that Pinchas actually is Eliyahu Hanavi. And we know that Eliyahu Hanavi, he's, so to speak, the embodiment of Tikkun HaBrit. He's the embodiment of the mastery of sexuality, to the extent that Eliyahu comes to the Brit Milah of every single Jewish boy on the 8th day of their life. Why is he coming for that day on the Brit Milah? Because the Brit Milah is the embodiment, it's the significance of the Jew's ability to be able to master physicality. And through the mastery of physicality, to reveal something deeper than what it looks like. And the way that this is expressed, not to get too graphic, but when we have this procreative organ between the legs for the male, it's covered by a gland and it's covered by a foreskin. Now you can't actually see what's called the crown, the keter of this body part, as long as the skin is on top. On the 8th day, there's a mitzvah d'oraita, which is considered one of the premium mitzvot, if you could say, in the Torah, one of the most important mitzvot in the Torah, to the extent that a Jew, if he does not have a Brit Milah, or if he does not have a kosher Brit Milah, it's keneged halachically, according to Jewish law, that he might not even be Jewish, even though his mother is Jewish. Now, obviously, this is a very challenging thing, because we understand that anybody whose mother is Jewish is automatically Jewish. But the fact that halachically there might have to be some distinctions that are made for this person shows how deep and how serious it is that a Jewish male gets the Brit Milah on the 8th day. And at every single Brit Milah, Eliyahu Hanavi is there. Now, interestingly, when Pinchas prayed like this, Hashem gave him what was called shalom, that he forever would have the Brit Shalom. He would have the covenant of peace. And this is actually a hint to a Kabbalistic secret, which I'm going to try to explain in a minute, which on paper seems paradoxical. That is, Pinchas was getting this quality of Shalom, peace. We know that peace is the name of Hashem, to the extent that in Halakha, it's a question of if you can even name your son Shalom, because if it's the name of Hashem, then you can't say that name in the bathroom. And he's going to be going to the bathroom in his lifetime. And therefore, it might be a challenge to say, hey, Shalom. But he can't say it. Why? Because he's in a place that you're not allowed to say Hashem's name. Kabbalistically, Shalom is a code word in the Sfirot for the Sfira of Yesod. Yesod is called the Brit. That is the place in which a Jew accesses and achieves sexual mastery. That is, that he uses the physical world specifically as a vehicle to reveal spiritual essence. Now, at its core, that means that he achieves mastery specifically in the area of sexual purity. And therefore, he uses sexuality only as a means to reveal a greater end. Now, the reason why this is the ikar of the Brit, even though everything in the physical world falls under the Brit, that means that when I eat, am I eating to reveal a greater reality, or am I eating simply just to satiate my physical body? If I'm doing it for the first reason, that is, I'm eating in order to reveal a higher level of godliness, then I am shomer Brit in this act of eating. However, if I'm eating only because it tastes good, then I have concealed Hashem from this act. That's called Pagama Brit. And whenever there is a Pagam of the Brit, Hashem is concealed in that place. So when is there peace in the world? When Hashem is there. So if the Brit has been augmented, it's been compromised, we'll say. So then as a result of that, there's no shalom there, there's no peace there, because Hashem, so to speak, Kivyachol, is not there. Comes Pinchas, who he's protesting for Hashem, and he is vigilant to be able to protect the sexual level of the Jewish people. Now, as a result of that, Hashem says paradoxically, seemingly when it's really not, you now have the Brit Shalom. From now on, peace is with you. And we know, what does this mean? He was guaranteed at that moment that he would reincarnate as Eliyahu Navi, and he would ultimately be the harbinger of peace. That he would be the one who would welcome and would announce the coming of the Mashiach Zikenu. And we know that the Mashiach himself is the revelation of peace, because he is going to get the whole world to get onto the concept of Hashem, to turn everybody onto Hashem. So therefore, Eliyahu is the harbinger of peace, because he's the harbinger of the Mashiach. However, Rabbi Nachman teaches in the second Torah Likutey Moharan that when a person gets to this level, that he's able to achieve such mastery of the physical world, which is most concentrated within the area of sexuality. However, it exerts itself, it expresses itself in every area. Then he gets this thing called the Bachur, the birthright. Now, even though we usually think about birthright as a free trip to Israel, and if you think deep enough, these things are connected. However, on the simple understanding, according to Rabbi Nachman's Torah, the birthright is really the ability to be able to pray and get answered. That when a Jew has the ability to pray to Hashem in a way that it's always answered, he has attained the birthright. That this was the original gift which Hashem desired to give to all the Jewish people. However, as a result of our, so to speak, having a transference of guf to neshama, that instead of having neshama, soul as priority over guf, and instead we've exchanged guf over neshama, body over soul, then as a result of that, we have lost the birthright. We have lost the ability to pray. However, the tzaddik, the one who has achieved this level, despite the fact that the majority of us have not, and despite the fact that we have gone into exile, and he's done it anyway, so he still has that birthright. He can still pray in that way that will only be revealed for all of us in the times of Mashiach. And he is able to do what's called a din tefillah. This is also one of the sources for why Rabbi Nachman says that when you pray to Hashem, you shouldn't pray meekly. You should pray in a way of protest. You should pray in a way of advocating for yourself. You should pray in a way almost like you're a lawyer and you're fighting with the judge to be able to be acquitted of what's going on. Now, where does he get this? Where's the source for this? Because a lot of people are uncomfortable with this notion, because their whole concept of tefillah is that I quietly, meekly speak to Hashem in a way of ordered prayer. Where Rabbi Nachman says that's good and you need to do that, but you also need to have a time during the day that you're alone and that you talk out loud, not quietly, not meekly, but that you scream to Hashem, and that you don't do it in a way of acquiescence, but that you do it in a way of protest. So where's the root for this? It actually comes from Pinchas, because it said that when he prayed in Tehillim, the Gemara shows there that the root for he prayed is the same as the word as he disputed. Meaning that the essence of the word to pray means to dispute. It means to fight. That you, so to speak, kiviyachol, you fight with Hashem. Now, when you do this, you need to understand that it makes sense. Why? Because if I'm fighting with Hashem, that means I believe in Hashem. Because if I don't really believe in Hashem, or I don't really believe that Hashem is in control of my life, that He's not causing the events that take my place in my life, that I don't have da'at, then I would never fight with Hashem. I'm never going to scream to Hashem. I'm never going to beg Hashem to help me because I don't believe that He actually is, or that He cares, or that He wants to. However, if I have this thing called da'at, that I know that Hashem is the cause of what takes place in my life. And interestingly, Rabbi Nachman actually teaches that your ability to have da'at is completely bound up with your ability to be shmirat habrit. That through your mastery of the physical world, through the revelation of your soul, you acquire this thing called da'at of knowing Hashem. Then you're able to pray to Hashem. You're able to fight kiviyachol, so to speak, with Hashem. Now, this is not in a way of disrespect. It's not in a way of arrogance. It's the opposite. Because of my deep reverence for Hashem, because of my love for Klal Yisrael, I'm going to go fight with my father. In a way of, like Rabbi Nachman teaches, a child who's pestering his Abba, not because he disrespects him, but because he loves him, because he reveres him, and because he feels and he really believes that if his father would give him this thing, he would be able to do more for his Abba. So as a result of this, he is now going to go protest. Kikol hakikulim, because he says all damage in the world, chas v'shalom, hem ayadeh bechinat v'anachash hayarum. All damage that has come into the world came through this original primordial force that's called the Nachash. Now, when people think about the Nachash, they think about a very immature, so to speak, understanding of a story in the beginning of time of a man and a woman who are naked, and you have there a snake. However, it's very clear, even from Chazal, from the Midrashim, that this story did not happen the way that we would, so to speak, have been told in our Jewish day schools, or that we were told by other secular historians who are trying to explain the fallacy, the lies of religion or of Judaism or the Torah. It is a much more nuanced, much deeper event than that. And if you go into the commentaries, then you see it goes even more so, to the extent that the commentaries of the sages explain that you can't even understand how this event took place in its actual state, because it took place prior to the physical world as we know it today. Okay, so with all that being said, the way that we can best understand this concept of the Nachash is that it is the quality of cunning, of sophistication. Not that it's this physical entity that slithers on the floor and that it hisses and X, Y, and Z. That's after the fact. This original force called the Nachash, he presents himself to be something that he's not. That's his entire essence. He gets you to think something, to feel something, to act in a way which is not true, which is not authentic, which is not genuine. This is the entire koach of the Nachash. And that's why the very first thing it says about the Nachash, where we hear from our sages, that if you want to know the essence of anything in the Torah, whether it's a person or whether it's an event or whether it's a circumstance or a quality of something, look at the very first time that it's written in the Torah. And if you have the eyes to see and the heart to feel, you will actually see the entire essence of that thing. So too, what is the first thing that's said about the Nachash? Hanachash haya arum. It was sophisticated. It was cunning. What does that mean? That he tries with all of his being to get a person to blemish his da'at, to corrupt his consciousness, to cause him to fall asleep. This is the entire power, strength, and desire of the Nachash. This sophisticated force which was created in the world only in order to give us free will. His entire job on paper and his desire is to get us to fall asleep, to cause our consciousness to go into exile, to help us forget about Hashem. How does he get us to do this? like was just hinted to before earlier in this lesson, that the greatest, so to speak, barrier, the greatest klipa, the greatest peel or shell, obstacle towards experiencing in a very felt, palpable, deep, intimate way that Hashem is the one who's causing everything that takes place, that he loves me, and that he's doing everything in order to bring me closer to him. The greatest barrier to this is called Pagama Brit. That is, that I have a blemish, or I have a corruption of the natural state of affairs in the area of sexuality. That is, very simply, on the simple level, that if I'm a male, that I waste physical seed, or that I have thoughts of things which are not considered halachically allowed according to the Torah, or that I feel a certain way about those thoughts, okay? So obviously we live in a generation, in a world in which this is commonplace, to the extent that it's as normal to be Pagama Brit as it is to get up in the morning. And therefore you see that we have a greater test in our generation than anybody in history. Because if you're not Pagama Brit, you're weird. If you don't watch Netflix and you don't watch different people having intimate relations on the screen every night before you go to sleep, you're weird. If you don't think about things or people in a way which is not according to the Torah, so you are, so to speak, not progressive. You have not elevated yourself to the way of the new world. And at the same time, we know that in our generation, we have never had higher rates of depression, higher rates of anxiety, higher rates of substance abuse, higher rates of confusion, greater problems at home, higher rates of divorce, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, even though on the one hand, we feel that all those things must just be happening for genetic or psychological predispositions, right? However, Rabbi Nachman says that these two things actually go hand in hand. That to the degree in which there is a breakdown in the area of sexuality, to that degree, emotional and psychological suffering increases. Now, what's the reason for this? Because the Brit, this area of sexuality, is the entire vehicle for experiencing Da'at, to experience that Hashem is the cause of everything that takes place. And this is the reason why when we go to tzaddikim for advice, they can think so clearly. They can give us an eita that makes us feel, oh my gosh, they understand. They're able to see, so to speak, above the scene. How are they able to see above the scene? Because they are above the scene. Because if anybody has gotten themselves to the ability that they have literally become a master of their sexuality, that they are not a slave to sexuality, but sexuality is a slave to them, it works for them and not the other way around, then Rabbi Nachman teaches they are able to elevate above the consciousness of this world and to see much deeper, to see Hashem. So therefore, the Nachash, he dresses himself up in different ways. He only wants to be able to remove your da'at, to confuse you, to make you think that Hashem is not controlling your life. He's not causing the events of your life. You are being affected and afflicted by people, places, and things, not by Hashem. And therefore, I'm not going to respond in a positive action, in a course of action. I'm going to move in towards intermediaries and to external sources of help when they can't help you. Now, what's the reason that I can't see as Hashem, and therefore I feel compelled that I need to go get it from people, places, and things? The reason is because your da'at has been jumbled. Your knowledge of Hashem has been concealed from you through the lacking of the area of sexuality. Because a person, a Jew's da'at, is comprised of three levels of mochin. Now, what's this term mochin? This term mochin is brought down in Kabbalah, and it's explained that the Jewish mind is made up of three faculties. These three faculties are called chokhmah, bina, and da'at. So to speak, we'll call chokhmah the right side, Bina, the left side of the mind, and we're going to call da'at the mind's eye, or the middle mind. Okay? Now, actually, we know that according to science at this point, this actually is true. That at the time that maybe we might not have had this information, and we said that there are these three main faculties of the mind, we actually see that there actually are. Okay? And if you understand how these things work Kabbalistically, then you can actually have a deep understanding of why scientifically we have found out certain things about, let's say, if you're a lefty or if you're a righty, X, Y, and Z. Okay, this is not the time for that, but just to go into show that our sages were onto things way before the modern scientific world. However, one of the interesting things about these three types of mochin is that hu bechinat shalosh mechitzot perusot minei hatava azot. So this is a very deep, interesting thing, and I'm going to give you a mashal to be able to understand this. Let's say, for instance, after this class, you receive a check for $1 million. Okay? It's yours. It was given to you. You don't know who you got it from, but it's for sure yours. And you're promised this check at the beginning of every year. Okay, great. What's going to happen to you? For the rest of the day, you're going to feel great. Now, Rabbi Nachman says, what happens when a person feels great? He has self-control. When a person is besimcha, he's happy, he's able to actually choose what he wants to do in his life. However, when a person is sad, or he's anxious, or he's confused, he automatically loses, so to speak, his koach of bechira. He loses his power of free will. And he ultimately becomes, so to speak, like a kite which is flown in the wind at the desire of the flyer, and he has no control over his actions. This is the reason why a person who suffers from mental health issues, you see automatically he often makes decisions which actually increase his suffering, which or a person who has substance abuse dependency, that he will make decisions which on paper are actually increasing his suffering, or increasing his dependency. Now, why would he do that if he knows it's causing his suffering? And the answer is because he's not happy, he doesn't have the faculty of mind. And because he doesn't have the faculty of mind, he's not strong enough to make choices that are good for him. And this is the real reason why Rabbi Nachman says it's a mitzvah gedola lios besimcha tamid, that it's a great mitzvah to be happy always. Because Rabbi Nachman says that the reason why a person does not make good decisions is not because he's irresponsible. It's not because he doesn't care enough. It's not because he has bad intentions. It has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that he's not happy. So this is a huge chidush. Why would it be that the fact that I'm not happy would cause me to be able to make bad decisions? And the answer is because according to Kabbalah, your ability to steer your mind as you desire is dependent on your level of joy. When a person is happy, he's able to focus his mind on what he wants to. And when you're not able to. This is the reason why, this is one of the deeper reasons why we have very low attention spans at this point. That we can't just sit down and do something without thinking about a million other things. One of the deep reasons is because we're actually not happy. And if we were really happy, truly happy, happy from the inside, not from external means, because you might come and say to me, what do you mean I'm happy? I am happy. I watch videos, it makes me happy. I look at Instagram, it makes me happy. I see funny things online, it makes me happy. Yeah, and what if I took that from you? Are you still happy? And if the answer is no, you're not really happy. Because it's taught by Kabbalah that simcha, besimcha is the word b'machshava, that is thought. That is simcha, joy comes from an inner consciousness. And it's not dependent on certain things being away. That you're happy not because of something taking place, you're just happy. And when you get to this level of simcha, which comes through following the eitzah of great tzaddikim, following the advice and learning their Torah and following through with it, even though I may not believe that at this time in my life I'm ready for it, or that I feel that it's good for me, or that I don't want to. But if I do it anyway, as a result of that, I'm drawing into myself the koach of simcha, of joy. And then I'm able to think clearly, and I'm able to make choices which are good for me. So now Rabbi Nachman brings a very deep thing based on the Zohar. That is that these three states of mochin, that is chokhmah, bina, and da'at, or wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, they are not just different ways of understanding the world. They are also barriers or shields or partitions which protect from forces of negativity, meaning to protect you from tavot. Rabbi Nachman explains in the Likutey Halachot that for every single one of your mental faculties, you have a taiva, you have a desire, which is actually a barrier or a fence or a concealment of that moach, of that type of mentality or consciousness. So therefore, of these three mochin, which is called chokhmah, bina, and da'at, when I have all three intact, then as a result of that, I can see and experience in a very deep, very clear way that Hashem is the cause of everything that takes place in my life. And this is the cause of joy. And this is the cause of me being able to act in a way which is appropriate, which is responsible, which is in a way which will benefit me in my life and those around me. However, there are, so to speak, these taivot, these physical desires, that when we engage in them, when we encourage them, when we strengthen them, which is done through the faculty of the Nachash, that he, so to speak, his whole desire is to increase our taiva for these different things, whether it's in the area of sexuality, whether it's in the area of food, whether it's in the area of kavod, desire for honor, whether it's in the taivot mammon, desire for money, right? Even very deeply, anger is also a taiva. If you notice that when you get angry, did you ever notice how hard it is for you to stop? That's because very deeply Kabbalah explains that that anger itself is a taiva. If you ever notice, just like when you start eating, it's hard to stop eating. So too, when you get angry, it's hard to stop being angry. What's the reason? Because very deep, very subconsciously, it's actually a taiva. So all of these taivas actually are things which block off your consciousness. They cause your consciousness to go to sleep. This is all the efforts of the Nachash, this negative spiritual force, which is given to us in order that we should have free will to choose not him, to choose against him. And what is his desire? To cause our da'at to go into exile. With this, we will stop. We have a lot more to say. And then Bezrat Hashem, Monday morning, we will continue this lesson. Before we get to questions, and then at the end, we'll have David's statement, which I'm sure Bezrat Hashem will have. I just want to announce that tonight we're having a very special Tzion field trip. There's a big tzaddik who's coming to Queens. He's called the Tasha Rebbe. He is the nephew, or I think the son-in-law, of the very famous, very big tzaddik, the Tasha Rebbe. And he's coming to Queens to give over Divrei Torah. It's Rosh Chodesh Adar tonight, the beginning of the last month of the year, this is a very, very powerful, very important month. This is the month of Purim. And we know that according to Chassidut, according to Kabbalah, it is, so to speak, using this month to the highest ability, actualizing our potential spiritually this month, that actually allows us in the month of Nisan afterwards to have Pesach in reality, to have Geula, to have redemption. So this is a very, very important month. And in this month, the rabbis taught us 2,000 years ago that we must go up in joy. It's a mitzvah to go up in joy. It's a mitzvah to be besimcha. Now, one of the deeper reasons is because in the month of Adar, the desire for physicality becomes intensified. And like we just said before, what is my strength, my koach, and being able to choose what I want as opposed to only what my body wants, or only what my lower self wants, only what my ego wants. It is to be besimcha. So the sages have given us a tikkun, a rectification, a formula in which to be able to achieve this month of Adar in the most positive way. That is that we should be besimcha. And it's this ability to be joyful that allows us to kick into this deeper consciousness on Purim. And then we are able to experience actually the light that will only be revealed in the times of Mashiach. So if anybody wants to join us for this family Tzion field trip, please reach out to us at tzionbreslavproject@gmail.com or text one of the members of Tzion. His name is Benjamin Roberts, our head of outreach. If somebody could put his number on the bottom, and that way he can put you in, and we can all go together. B'ezrat Hashem, it's at 7:30 p.m. tonight. If someone also could put the advertisement for the thing, I believe B'ezrat Hashem, it should be a very beautiful thing for everybody. And at the end, there'll be a seuda, and also he will be giving brachot out. Rabbi Nachman says it's a very big thing to go see the face of tzaddikim and hear Torah from their mouth. So we have a big schut tonight on Rosh Chodesh Adar to be able to experience this. So B'ezrat Hashem, you guys will come with us. So before we get to David Meirav, who will have a statement, can we please have questions from everybody?
Rav.
Yes.
Just about tonight. Where is it? Like what is this?
Yes. So there's an advertisement for this. Benjamin Roberts should be sending it out right after this class is over, along with all the details on the flyer. So if you are in the Tzion Breslov groups, you will get it there.
Are we not having a lecture tonight? We're just doing that?
We're doing this instead of the lecture because of the unique opportunity.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Don't be shy. A person who doesn't ask doesn't learn. And if you don't learn, you can't actualize what you learn. If you don't actualize what you learn, then your life can't change. And that's what we all want. Any questions? Anything at all? This is precious time. Ask me, please. Even my favorite color. What I like to eat. Yes.
Ravenu, so quick question about Hibodadu. Is it permissible? Is it okay to recite Tikkun during Hibodadu, or should Hibodadu just be purposely for speaking the words that you want to speak? Or can you have a part of Hibodadu where you pray and you cry out, and then a part of it where you recite Tikkun?
Okay. So good question. So Lior is asking us about this thing that's called Tikkun HaKlali. Tikkun HaKlali, Rabbi Nachman says, is a general healing, a general remedy for any physical or spiritual issue that we may be dealing with. And therefore, it's common practice for students of Rabbi Nachman to say this once every day. And specifically, for sure, if there is some type of issue in the area of sexuality, like we just said, that has been expressed either the day before, the night before, that day of, that this, Rabbi Nachman says, actually gets rid of any of the negative effects that come from such a thing. Okay, so therefore it's a very important thing to say. However, I would suggest that when you do your Hibodadu, the Tikkun HaKlali is not part of that it's a separate thing. Rabbi Nachman, he encouraged many times over that you're talking to Hashem and Hibodadu, it should be like you're talking to your best friend, from the own words, from your own heart. And even though Tikkun HaKlali is a very powerful thing, and it's highly recommended, at the same time, those are not your own words. So even though you should see yourself in it, the power of Hibodadu comes from the fact that it is your own words coming from your own heart in your own first language. So therefore, I know it takes a little bit more time, but I would suggest to do it outside of your Hibodadu. Now, obviously, if a person is going to add to his Hibodadu by doing this in a way that he wouldn't have if he didn't do the Tikkun, so it's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong. There's no, so to speak, set rules. However, I would say that the most effective way to take advantage of the time that you're already spending and doing your Hibodadu is to follow the Eitzah of Rabbi Nachman, that is to talk to Hashem from your own words like he's your best friend.
Thank you, Rob. One more quick question. I haven't found, I've looked, the only Breslov Sidur that I found was the one for Shabbos and Yom Tov. Is there one that exists for weekday?
If there is, it'll be from the Breslov Research Institute. If you look up their website after the class, you could see if they ever came out with one, or you can email them to see if they are coming out with one. If they don't have one, then for sure you're not going to see one, at least in English, that you can look at. But one of the things which kind of set Rabbi Nachman apart from other Hasidic masters is that he never encouraged a change in nusach, or so to speak, a diversion from your own personal path. Meaning that if you're Ashkenazi, you continue to pray nusach Ashkenaz. If you are Sephardi, you continue to pray nusach Edut Mizrach. If you are Hasidic, that you continue to pray nusach Sfard. So this is one of the beautiful things about Rabbi Nachman, is that his path is not one in which you have to actually change anything external about yourself. The entire path is to engage in and to grow internally, and to actually, that will express itself in these things which were given to you. As well, in the area of the Shulchan Aruch, that Rabbi Nachman says not to change one word, that when it comes to Likutey Moharan, you can have a field day with making chidushim, novelties and understanding based on your own understanding of my Torah. And don't worry if it's completely true or not, it's good for you. However, when it comes to the actual Shulchan Aruch that was written, he says that no matter who you are, just keep it. And if you're Ashkenazi, so you keep the minhagim of the Ashkenaz. If you are Sephardi, you keep the minhagim of the Sephardim. The path of Breslov is not one, let's say, like Chabad, that they have their own version of the Shulchan Aruch, literally. That the Shulchan Aruch Arav, that the Baal Tanya, he created his own amendation to the Shulchan Aruch, and so they follow actually different laws than the rest of the Jewish people. Even though it's based on the same exact laws, the way that he paskins out is different than on many of the laws. Or that you should take on, like, as well, just as an example with Chabad, that if you pray by them, then you take on Nusach Sfard. Whereas Rabbi Nachman doesn't suggest that you change any of these things about yourself. You just simply run to Hashem. There is a question here on the bottom. What is the purity of the Brit for women, and how does it relate to living today's teaching for women? Very good. So even though the area of the Brit is a more difficult challenge on paper for men than it is for women, in our generation, it could be that it's equally challenging, because the secular world has expressed sexuality in a way that it is not a means to an end, but it is an end in and of itself. And it's the ultimate end. And it's the thing that we should all be pining for. It's the thing that we should be thinking about all the time. If you go down the street in any residential area, you will see advertisements of naked women and naked men. If you go on the television, or you go on Netflix, or you go on YouTube, every advertisement will be filled with pictures of naked women and men. Or you might just watch movies where you actually see and you want to see them interacting in that way. However, according to the Torah, this thing of sexuality is the deepest spiritual act that there is. That there is no greater revelation of godliness that potentially can take place in this area of sexuality, and that this concept of sexual union is actually a revelation of a union of Hashem and His Shekhinah, that is the male and female, so to speak, aspects of godliness, that they are uniting, and that's expressing itself down here when a man and a woman come together. So for this reason, the laws in the Torah that have to deal with sexuality are more stringent than, let's say, in any other area. And the reason is because the preciousness of what's available or waiting for a person on the other end, if he's able to hold by them, is that he achieves a very high level, of consciousness, of God consciousness. So therefore, for us, for women, just as much as men, there may not be the concept of wasting seed, but there is everything else. That means that every single time that a woman sees something which is outside of the distinctions that are made in the Torah, which is almost everything that we see nowadays, this is to the degree of a pagam of the Brit. This is a blemish of the area of the Brit. Because as soon as a person sees it, Chazal say he starts to think about it. And we know that a person's mind is his neshama, it is his God consciousness. So as long as he starts to begin to think about it, then he starts to desire it. If he starts to desire it, he then moves to act on it, right? So you have this whole chain of events that takes place through seeing. So therefore, something that women can do in our generation and need to work on as much as men in, even though they may not be as visually stimulated as men naturally are. However, in our generation, because of the proliferation of media, they probably are at this point stimulated, if not in the same way, but at least as intensely. So therefore, being careful and vigilant about what you see. Also about what you hear. A lot of the music today is laced, if that's the right word, with every single lyric is about a girl wanting to be with a guy or a guy wanting to be with a girl, what's going on in the bedroom, how they're doing it, X, Y, and Z. I'm sorry for being so explicit, but I have to, because it's just, there's no way to understand how deep it goes, that you cannot listen to a song on the radio with it not being about this thing. Now on paper, it's interesting, because even though we have developed more than ever technologically and intellectually, we have, so to speak, went the opposite way in the area of sexuality. That we have, instead of evolving, we've so to speak devolved. Now, Rabbi Nachman actually hinted to this and alluded to this when he said that there's a wave of atheism that's going to come into the world. That the majority of people in the world will stop believing in Hashem. Not just that I stop believing, meaning I don't believe in God, but they will stop having da'at. They will stop actually experiencing that Hashem is the cause of the things that take place in their life, that he loves them, that he wants the best for them, that he wants to be close to them, and they will only see darkness. And at the same time, we see that there is this tremendous proliferation of sexuality as the main course of reality. And Rabbi Nachman is actually hinting to in our lesson that they go hand in hand. That to the degree in which we, so to speak, devolve in the area of sexuality, to that degree we evolve in lack of understanding. That our consciousness goes into exile. Rabbi Nachman actually makes this pretty explicit, that he says that if you see any secular philosopher, you can take it to the bank that he's also involved in tremendous areas of sexual promiscuity. And how could he be so sure? Because his ability to think ideas or concepts that are divorced from spirituality, it actually is rooted in the engaging of sexual distortion, okay? So that's another thing, what you hear. And Rabbi Nachman says, even if you listen to music and you don't even understand the words, let's say, Rabbi Nachman says it's almost impossible for a Jew to be close to Hashem if he doesn't listen to music which is coming from a person who they themselves are close to Hashem or trying to be close to Hashem. Because as a result of that, their energy, and especially that sexual energy, it mamish infuses even the beat of the song. And you can feel, even as you're listening to the song, you have an arousal just from hearing, let's say, the music in the background, which goes to show you how intense is music for us, okay? So therefore, hearing, also in what you say, how you speak. So this is also the area of the Brit, okay? So all of these areas for us are connected. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And obviously, what I'm talking about, even though I'm saying it like it's pashut, like it's simple, I know that this is a very difficult challenge in our generation. I know that this is very hard to accomplish. I know it's not even on anybody's radar. I know that doctors themselves would suggest to you that you watch these things and then express yourself. Otherwise, you're going to get clogged up and you're going to have chas v'shalom, some type of cancer that comes from it. However, it's clear from Kabbalah, from Jewish mysticism, that the opposite is true, and that that the cause of many spiritual, emotional, psychological, and physical ailments are actually rooted in this demise or distortion of sexuality. And therefore, one of the best things that a person can do is to have Rabbi Nachman in their life, because this is one of the areas in which, I think the area in which that he has an ability that nobody else has an ability, is that he can take people in our generation who might have even grown up like that, who had no understanding of spirituality growing up, who didn't know any of these things or didn't believe any of these things prior to. He can have that person literally go from all the way one way to having the strength, the conviction, the persistence, the resilience to be able to strengthen himself and to overcome this area for himself and to become actually a master of this area. even maybe in a way that a person who grew up religious wouldn't be, that this is the koach of Rabbi Nachman. So therefore, just hold on. Hold on to Rabbi Nachman, keep learning his Torah every day, keep trying to do the things that he says, keep doing hipodadut. And Rabbi Nachman says also that to the degree in which you achieve tikkun of the mouth, meaning that you speak to Hashem, to that degree you strengthen your brit, and vice versa, that they go hand in hand. They're like man and wife. So this is another practical piece of advice, that the more that you speak to Hashem, the more that you increase in your koach of sexual strength, and the vice versa as well.
Ravana, one last quick question.
Go ahead.
Shmir to Brit, or the wasting of seed, is it still the wasting of seed between husband and wife? If you're not necessarily trying to procreate, is it still wasting seed in the confines of marriage?
Okay, so that's a good question. The answer is anything which does not go according to the dictates of the Torah is called wasting seed. So if, for instance, and I'm just going to be explicit, if you're with your spouse in a way which is considered prohibited according to the Torah, even though you are with your spouse, and that's great, that's better than the majority of people in the world, but still, it's still considered wasted seed. So if your rabbi, if your spiritual guide or master gives you a heter that because of, for certain reasons, that your wife does not want to or can't right now, so then it's not called. And there's different ways in which they will suggest to you to be able to still be intimate with your wife in a way that's not called wasted seed. Okay. But for that, you're going to need to speak to experts in the area. But for sure, if, so to speak, you just use certain things that prevent from you being together with your wife and utilizing that act as a means to which to bring Jewish souls into the world, so then it has to be in a certain way. Otherwise, it is considered wasted seed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Everybody have an amazing, amazing day. Bezrat Hashem, we will see each other tonight. And if not, then have a happy Shabbat. And Bezrat Hashem, yes, 1 second, David. And we'll be back on Monday together. David's going to finish us off with a home run statement. Go ahead, David.
Well, I just want to ask, where's going to be the beracha, where we're going to get the beracha from the touch Rav?
Oh, so you have to reach out to Benjamin Roberts. He's going to send you the flyer.
So I mean, I'm just want to know.
I know, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
All right. And also, like we said, it also anger is, according to Kabbalah, that anger is also part of with our desires, right?
Right.
Yes. Well, like we said, if the more the person gets angry, the more the spirit he's going to be facing.
Right. The more a person becomes angry, very good, the less happy he is. The less happy is, the less he is in control of his actions and his mind and his emotions. And this is what the Nachash wants. This is the deep reason why the Arizal HaKadosh, he refused to get angry, that he would literally, at all costs, every single day, put safeguards, put barriers up that would prevent him from getting angry. This is one of his main things. And this is one of the things in which he attributed his ability to achieve very deep levels of God consciousness, was due to the fact that he was always besimcha, that he was always happy. And Rabbi Nachman says this explicitly, that the ability for a Jewish mind, so to speak, to be unlocked and to achieve very high levels of consciousness in the area of spirituality and godliness is dependent on his level of joy, his simcha. So yes, very good, David. Okay, everybody have an amazing day.